there, and welcome to System76's Make, Build, and Create. I'm Adam. This is Levi. We both work here at System76, and there's a lot of interesting things that people do here at System76 on their off time, and so I thought we would feature some of those. And today I have Levi with a third of his keyboard collection.
Probably a third, maybe a quarter. A bit of an addiction.
A bit?
A bit. I have a lot of keyboards.
I mean, we got, what, 4, 6, 8, 10 keyboards laying on the desk here. And you said this is a quarter to a third?
Something like that. I lost count after a while.
I believe Levi might have a problem. A little bit.
A problem.
But that's okay. That's okay. Obviously, super cool stuff that you made here. Let's just kind of jump right in. So, which of these here was your first keyboard and your first kind of foray into mechanical keyboards and switches, and what got your addiction rolling, I guess?
Yeah, I became kind of interested in typing. I was at a job where I typed a lot, and I got some wrist inflammation, some repetitive stress problems. I tried some ergonomic keyboards. I switched to a Dvorak layout. I've been using that since. But eventually I got a mechanical keyboard, and I bought this one, which is a WASD V2. The thing that drew me to it is that it has some switches on the back that allow it to remap to Dvorak right there in the hardware, so you don't have to mess with it in the software or in the OS. But this one has blue switches, which are very obnoxious, really upset my coworkers at the time, but it's extremely comfortable. I've typed a lot on this. I really love it as a product. It has Aravesh keycaps. I'm not sure if WASD still offers this as a service, but when I bought this, they let me, I think they do, they let me upload my own keycap legend file. So I designed them this way. I think I got all the legends backwards because of a mistake, but minor point, it still looks really cool, and I still like it a lot as a keyboard.
Yeah, that's a really cool piece. And you said that, so buying this one, I guess, also gave you that the 2 levels of customization, right? So the dip switches in the back allowing you to quickly change to whatever layout you want, and then them allowing you to kind of customize your own key map and stuff like that, and your own keycaps. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty amazing, little keyboard, and a great way to get into it, I can imagine.
Yeah, and it kind of forced me to get into making keyboards in a sort of a weird way. One of the switches, I think it was up here, so one of the ones that you don't really ever use, it was sticky because it had something in the switch. So I took it all apart, voided the warranty, of course. I desoldered the switch, cleaned it out, lubed it up, it's good as new. And that just kind of made me think, like, that was really easy. Discrete key switches make things extremely easy to customize and just run with. So eventually after that, I decided, well, I kind of missed the ergonomic keyboard. So I looked around online and I found these kits called the ErgoDocs. This is actually the second one I built. The first one was featured in my other interview that we did. This one I custom built with Alps key switches. So I had to get a different acrylic switch plate cut. I got that done by a local shop. But when I bought the kit, there was a PCB, it came with switches. I actually did some switch modding for that kit. So I did Ergo clears. That's when you take MX clears and swap in lighter springs. They're very nice and tactile. And then this runs QMK. It's got an Arduino Teensy as its controller. So you can customize it however you want. There's just endless amounts of possibilities with these things.
Awesome. Well, and that's what I was going to kind of ask you about this one. So significantly different than the first one. I feel like that's quite a step from like first mechanical to ErgoDocs, right?
Yeah.
One extreme to the other, but cool. So you said that this is a Teensy in here. So this came, and forgive me for my ignorance here, but this came as a kit, right?
Yeah.
So you got the acrylic plates, the switches. Did you have to solder everything onto the PCBs as well? I mean, is that how this particular kit works?
Yeah, it was, the PCBs were completely unpopulated. Actually, one of the cool things about the ErgoDocs PCBs is they're reversible. So they're both the same, but the holes on them make it so that when you turn it over for the other hand, they all align correctly for the components.
Oh, cool.
This kit came with surface mount diodes, which I wasn't quite as good at soldering back then, so it was a lot of work to get those right. But I eventually got it right, and it was great. And actually that reversible design allowed me to put the ALP switches in this one. It was kind of an accident. Whoever designed this PCB, they didn't mean for it to be ALPS compatible, but it worked out that way. I mean, it needed a new switch plate, obviously, because the ALPS switch footprint is different from MX. But since I was able to just put solder ALPS switches and the pins aligned in the PCB, it made this a pretty easy customization after the fact.
Awesome. And so, moving on like here a little bit, let's go into what is the next. So we've gone from just like the basic kind of mechanical with a level of customability to the Ergo Docks, which is a full DIY build from a kit. There's so many keyboards here. There's the variety is just breaking my mind here right now as far as everything that's going on. So what was the next step for you after the Ergo Docks?
Yeah, so the Ergo Docks was kind of still my search for the holy grail keyboard, and with the Ergo Docks, I had thought I pretty much found it. Nowadays, I would still say it is probably my number 2 favorite keyboard.
Okay.
Only behind the Launch. That one's just special. But after I had an Ergo Docks, and that was what I used every day for work, and it was very comfortable, my hands didn't hurt anymore, it was fantastic. After that, I just kind of lost my mind and decided, what else can I try? What other crazy stuff can I come up with? And the Dactyl certainly fits that bill. This case is entirely 3D printed. Just because I was getting completely carried away, I also 3D printed the keycaps, which is probably not super recommended. They kind of get
kind of dingy a little bit.
Especially with white filament. If I picked black filament, it would have been a lot less evident.
Right.
But it is what it is now. And but this is also a very functional keyboard. I've used it at work as well. There's a lot of a learning curve with something like this, just because
it definitely seems so.
Yeah, the shape of it, it's really weird. If you can get used to it, it's very comfortable, possibly even more so than the Ergo Docks, but I was so used to the Ergo Docks at that point.
So whereas this was a kit, this was a complete build where you're soldering like switch to switch.
Yep.
And setting it all. Does this also run under a Teensy? Is there a different microcontroller for this particular?
I don't. Yeah, this one is also a Teensy.
Okay.
Teensy 2.0. I can recognize it because it's got the mini USB.
Mini USB.
Yeah, because I also use a lot of micros and pro micros, which are micro USB. It's a little bit more friendly of a connector.
Right.
But this one also has a Teensy. This one has a Teensy because it has way too many keys.
Right.
So it just didn't have enough pins without the extra large controller.
So we start with that, the bot with level of customization, the kit fully put together by you with some customized switches. This was a full build from, it looks like, basically nothing aside from some switches and a microcontroller and stuff, right? What was the next step for you? Because obviously this is a big step going from a standard keyboard to kind of an ergonomic layout. And then, we've kind of got a myriad of keyboards here. And so what was the next keyboard for you that kind of moved you away from the ergonomic kind of style and the tactile kind of style?
That was definitely this one. This is my XD75. It's also a 3D printed case. I went with normal switches on this, or keycaps on this one.
I love the colors.
Yeah, it had a different key set, but these are just, they look awesome, so I put them on there. But this one's also 3D printed, hand-wired matrix, Arduino Teensy microcontroller. So it's kind of in the same vein as this. It's also ortholinear. So the keys line up on this as opposed to a standard layout where they kind of stagger a little bit. So this was kind of in the same vein as these two, as trying to keep things ortholinear. The thing I liked about this one is I have both of my, what would be the left and the right hand over on each side with some keys in the middle. And that kind of gives your hands some separation. That was one thing that I wasn't crazy about with layouts like the plank and the Prionic, because your hands, they don't come straight out of your chest. So that was...
They don't?
No, usually not. If that's the, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Then I actually used this one for a while when I was on support, along with your Ergo docs. And then after that,
And they seem like maybe a little friendlier switches for the office, like.
Yeah. Yeah, these
a
are
little softer.
These are Box Royals, which is
Okay,
actually one of the options we offer in launch. They're wonderfully tactile. They're not the quietest thing in the world, but they at least don't have a clicker in there making extra noise intentionally. But they're extremely comfortable. I love those switches.
Yeah, those are great switches.
Sure. After that,
what's this beast here, man?
This was bought on a whim. So this is a Cherry.
It's actually like Cherry brand.
Yeah, it's for a point of sale system. So it actually.
That's what it kind of like reminded me of, like some sort of video switcher minus.
Yeah.
No,
and it actually came with, I took it off because I don't really need it on there, but it came with a credit card reader, like just the magnetic stripe slot on it. And all these caps, it was completely covered in these caps, which are
like the re-legible,
yeah, so you can like take the cap off, put a picture of asparagus in there, put the cap back on.
Let me ask you, when you got it, did it have pictures of like grocery store items like in it already?
No, it was new in box, never used.
Oh, okay,
so,
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, it was completely fresh. But the board that was in it and the controller that was in it, I couldn't figure out how to talk to them. So I desoldered everything. I pulled the PCB out. I went back to my trusty hand-wired matrix method.
Is this a Pro Micro here? No.
That's a TNC++.
Okay. That's what
2.0++, I believe. This one was a lot of switching. I think it's 144 switches or something like that.
That's definitely a soldering project. What would you say? For this, we've gone through a few of these now, but how long would you say it took you just in soldering to put this together? Obviously, by this time you'd had a little experience, you'd gotten a little bit better at it.
Yeah.
But how long do you think it took you to solder and hand wire that?
This one I would probably guess 5 hours, 6 hours.
Okay. So a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and it's not something I do all at once. I mean, I did that when I was doing the launch prototypes. So it was kind of a make them quickly sort of a thing. But when I do this at home, it's almost like knitting. You just sit there, watch some Stargate, just solder it a little bit at a time, and just kind of have a, just kind of relax.
Like work on a row or two or a column or two at a time, and then like set it down and come back to it the next day. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's a big step from all the previous 3 keyboards, but it still has this same spacing that you talked about. Is this something that you found yourself really using that often, or did you find yourself like just going back to the stuff you had made? Was this more of like this is cool, I want to buy it and build it and try it sort of thing?
Yeah, it was more, I totally bought it on a whim. I found it on eBay. It was $40, so which is really not bad,
especially for new in box, right?
Yeah, and if anything else, like that is a ton of switches. They're cherry black switches, so they're linear, which can be contentious. I think linear is fine, but not everybody likes them. If I couldn't do anything else with it, I could at least have a whole bunch of switches for a pretty fair price.
Right. And this was originally set up with like PS2 connectors.
Yeah.
It kind of has the I/O, and it looks like it even has like I/O knockout plate here for like a COM port and stuff like.
Yeah, this is definitely a chassis they used for a few things. I'm not sure exactly what all they used it for. There was another knockout plate here, but I took that out when I put the controller in.
Right, to hook up the controller.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, and that whole PCB came out. I still have it on a shelf, but
I love the randomness of the keycaps there too.
Yeah, these are.
That's a bee. Just so you guys know, that's a bumblebee.
Yep. And we got the Bitcoin symbol.
Wait,
sunglasses,
what? Oh, you
lasers. This one's that's Reaper from Overwatch.
I'm not gonna lie, I really do like the laser. I really do like the laser keycaps.
Yeah.
They look awesome. And so you went, we've gone through a few of these now. What was the next one? But before we do that, before we move kind of into the next one, I have a question, and I'm sure others have had the same question. I know they have because I've heard them here in the factory kind of ask this question before. Your addiction to keyboards, do you believe that had any influence over launch?
I kind of think so. You know, I'm kind of a spectacle when I was, you know, bringing in some crazy looking keyboard, and people would say, "Oh, that's hilarious," you know, but it's probably not useful. But then I would actually plug it in and then use it for the day. And, you know, I'm not going to bring a keyboard that I'm not very efficient on to work. So
right.
I'd actually get just as much work done. So people were kind of looking at me like, just kind of, you can actually type on something that looks like that?
Right.
Eventually, because I wasn't the first person that liked mechanical keyboards.
Oh, I'm sure not. Yeah, we're all nerds here to some extent, right? And we all love that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And immediately on the first keyboard, when you said, you know, you opened it up and voided the warranty. So, I think that's great proof that you are a true nerd, sir.
Yeah.
Because you are going to void your warranty to make something awesome.
But eventually, I decided to make this one. This is a Melody 96. I bought a PCB. Then after that, I kind of bought the PCB on a whim, and I was like, wait, how do I actually build the rest of it? Because I'm not great at 3D modeling. John, our mechanical engineer, actually told me that he would be willing to help me design this.
Cool.
So I got the whole, I made an SVG file of the exact layout of all the keys and made sure they'd line up with the PCB. And then he helped me out and cut this aluminum top plate out on the laser that we use to cut Thalio panels and all of the I/O stuff in them and all the vent holes and everything like that.
Right.
And with that, I was able to solder all the switches into the PCB through the plate. I had to design a base. That was probably a Saturday in Blender, even though it's very simple. It took me a while, but I got it working. My 3D printer is very small, so I printed 2 pieces and glued them together. But ultimately it works. And that has box navy switches in it.
Yeah, I was going to ask if we were still on Kale switches here.
Yeah, and...
So do you think that maybe John's collaboration with you on this may have kind of slightly given him the bug as well?
Yeah, I think so. And that helped because fortunately, I kind of went with a fairly conventional layout on this one, and I put on keycaps that still have legends. So this is a very usable keyboard for even somebody who isn't gonna, pick up an Ergodox and know what to do with it. And after I made this one, it got passed around the office a bunch. Carl tried it, Jeremy tried it, a few other engineers tried it. I don't know if we got Michael to try it or not, but
really cool.
It got passed around and everybody said, like, this thing's pretty great to type on, like what makes it so great? And, we kind of started talking about it and, trying to figure out what made a keyboard great is what made us really start asking a lot of the questions that led to launch. And some of those were layout questions. Some of them were questions about switches, about the overall construction of the thing.
Right. Ortholinear versus
Yeah.
This one I see here in the back, and you guys may not be able to see this real well, but here where it connects, there's looks like a little microcontroller back in there. But we look like we're on Type C here.
That PCB came with the controller and everything already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so you didn't have to do anything to adjust it?
Yeah, it came with the Type C port, but it's a weird Type C port. You can't use a C to C cable because there's like a couple extra components in there that need to negotiate, like, hey, this is a downstream device. So if you use a C to A cable, fine, no problem. But a C to C cable, it just doesn't work.
Well, and I can kind of start seeing like where this would kind of introduce that, right? And where like launch would kind of start taking shape after this. So, I mean, this is a really cool piece. And I love the, just the simple machine screws, right? Like just the look of it almost has like a steampunky kind of vibe too. Like, I think the only thing that can make this more steampunk would be like a brass plate or something on the top, but
yeah,
it looks amazing.
Well, and I thought of painting it for a while, but once I saw the caps in there on that unfinished aluminum, I was like, no, that's the look. That's how it needs to look.
Yeah.
And I left it alone.
It looks good. It really looks good. And so you said that was kind of like the pre-launch, where everybody kind of passed around the office. The conversation kind of started, about layouts and different things, and I feel like just nerding out like we do on various different topics, right? Like it could be anything really. But then we move over to some others. I'm looking here. This looks like Pro Micro, an Arduino Pro Micro powering this. Can you tell us a little bit about this one here?
Sure. This was the first prototype, I guess. It's hard to call it a launch prototype because it's
so
not
different.
really. Although it's got a lot of layout similarities. The split space bar. It's got the controller on an umbilical here. We used KLX switches on this.
Like a low profile.
Yeah, they're kind of a cool, they're mechanical, but they have a scissor mechanism. They're very interesting.
Okay.
And part of the idea of this was to create a keyboard that could go in a laptop or in a desktop chassis.
Cool.
But you know that you have to go so thin with laptop keyboards that a lot of compromises had to be made. This thing still works great. It had some drawbacks. Keeping the switches clipped into the plate was really difficult, so I eventually went through it. I got impatient and I hot glued them, but I didn't do it right. I got some hot glue in the switches themselves, so I had to spend a lot of time with tweezers.
Digging hot glue out.
Just pulling all that stuff out of there. But then this one got passed around the office for a while. It didn't originally have legends on it. They're just blank black keycaps because there wasn't high keycap availability for these. But we realized a lot of people, even if they're touch typers, they still glance down from time to time to make sure they're at the right spot on their keyboard. So we got some stickers, put it on there, made it easier for a lot of people to use it. Eventually we decided the X switches are probably not the way to go. Availability's tough on them, and keycap availability is not the best.
Right.
They're still great though. I hope they take off and get more market share because I think they're wonderful. And there's a lot of people out there that want a really nice tactile, low profile key switch. And this is a great solution for that.
Yeah, I definitely think you get that feel from it, you know? And I mean, you still have some travel on the switch, right? So it's not, but it really does have that kind of tactile feel while being minimalist feeling or minimalist looking even. Really cool piece. So I assume this one also got passed around.
Yep.
And everybody kind of gave it a try. And I'm assuming that you had to put the legend on there because of everyone else, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
I protested a bit.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, this one's really cool, and I do like the, I don't know if you guys can see this, we'll get a close up here in a minute, but the skull and crossbones. So scary.
The label maker had some funny symbols, so I got
Why not
carried
use
away.
them? Yeah, why not use them? Exactly.
Why'd they put them there if they didn't want you to use them?
All right, so this one, we're starting to see like a bent aluminum here. This kind of has that, did you say pterodactyl kind of feel where it's split, but it doesn't really have that space. It doesn't have that kind of ergonomic shape to it. So, and these look like they're...
Those are Pro Micros.
Pro Micros as well.
Yeah.
Can you, so break it down for me.
So this was the first foray into an ortholinear keyboard. As everything we've seen so far, I'm a big fan of ortholinear. And part of the idea of it was have a keyboard that when set side by side, each of the halves, it's still kind of a whole keyboard.
Right.
But then you can move it out further if you want. I like it I like moving, you know, because if you have your elbows on armrests on a chair and you have your hands stretched out, really far apart, and then you can still get your hands on both halves of the keyboard. I find it very comfortable. Not everybody does though. And then to take it up even another level, if you have both of these halves split far apart, you can put your mouse in the middle.
Nice.
Yeah, or a trackball.
Yeah.
A trackball in the middle of your keyboard is always a hit.
That's cool. So was there like intent that these would be like, there would be kind of a magnets on either side of these so that if you wanted to snap it together, it would kind of snap together, and if you wanted to take it apart, you could?
Yeah, that was an idea, but first we just wanted to see how this layout worked.
Right.
Ortholinears, it's a pretty far break from a conventional layout.
Right.
This layout didn't work so great. We used Chalk mini switches, which with a single unit keycap, they work pretty well and they feel all right. What really messed this layout up was the 2-unit keycaps because we didn't stabilize them. And off-axis presses on these,
Right.
the switch binds up and it just feels terrible. If they're stabilized, they're fine, but we didn't think that far ahead on these. So I think part of it being so annoying to use because of the lack of stabilizers made people a little dismissive of the layout itself, and they didn't, you know, it's probably a little too wild for most people anyway. So
yeah, and you touched on that. So can you tell me, you know, what is kind of, and I just wanted to say here again before I put this down, these switches feel very similar to the switches on this kind of first one, a little more travel. But can you tell us, for those that don't know, what exactly does a stabilizer do for the switch?
yeah, so it's like a sway bar in a car. So it kind of links both ends together so that when you press one end down, and the best example of that is on a space bar. I'm sure everybody's taken a space bar off and they see some weird mechanism that attaches on both ends, even though the button's in the middle. And the reason for that is if it wasn't stabilized and you push this side, because when people are typing, they don't always just hit straight in the middle of the space bar. The other end will just come up if it's not stabilized, and it usually won't actuate the switch. So if you have the stabilizer in there, when you push this side, the bar that goes through to both ends will pull this side down as well, keeping the keycap level and actually fully pressing down on the switch every time it goes down. So
you get actuation on the switch every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a size at which you use stabilizers and you don't? I would imagine like a normal kind of 1U keycap size, you wouldn't really need a stabilizer for, right? Is it?
Yeah.
Is it once you start kind of scaling up that you have to start using the stabilizers?
Yeah, and it depends a lot on the switches, is something I found. Because like both my ErgoDocs and my Dactyl here have 2U switches, or keycaps on the thumb cluster, and they work just fine without stabilizers. They're a little wobbly on the ErgoDocs because these are out switches, but the wobble doesn't cause the switch to bind. So I can deal with wobble. I just don't like it. If you try to push the switch and it binds and it doesn't actuate, and it's just like a hard wall, like the switch is stuck there. That's no fun. On this, those mini chalk switches, 2U absolutely needs to be stabilized. That is a hard requirement because otherwise the switch binds.
Yeah, you can definitely feel that.
Yeah, and we tried to get around it by putting gaffer's tape on the outside edge of those caps, and that kind of preloads them in one direction.
Right.
So when you press on it, it still like kind of seesaws down and actuates the switch. If you take that off and then you try to hit that inside edge, which that's the left side, you're hitting that with your pinky. So you're usually not going all the way over to the center of the switch. You're just hitting the edge of it. Right. They bind every time. It's really uncomfortable.
So this is actually like a workaround hack that you guys did to kind of make the switches bounce back and not bind up on you. That's cool.
That was something I tried, and by that time everybody was like, no, that thing's uncomfortable, I don't want to use it. I was like, but I kind of made it a little better with some tape, and they're like, no, let's just go to the next design.
Right, and so we're going to move along here to kind of the next design as well. I love this one because I absolutely love the myriad of switches that you have on here. All right, so we're back. We may have had a little bit of a malfunction. The battery in the camera may have died. And so but we're just going to keep moving on here. And we'll edit this together. It'll be movie magic. I might do a magic. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. So you've shown us, kind of the first three. You've shown us like the thing that kind of got everybody addicted to some degree, like your addiction is. And then we've got this low profile, kind of a blend of something that could be used in a laptop, could be used as a desktop. Mm-hmm. We've got the split with the low profile switches. We talked about that a little bit. And then we're starting to kind of take shape here with launch. So first off, I'd love to say that, again, I love keycaps, the 3 bombs. Like, I don't know what's going on with that.
Me neither.
Caps lock in random places, lower, gear up, or gear down. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
War keys.
War? Yeah. Like, it's pretty cool. This one looks like it has maybe like a little window or something in it for LEDs or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, explain this one to me a little bit. I would imagine that this is also, again, Pro Micro, right? Inside, kind of as the brain. But we're starting to take shape here a little bit. Looks like it's punched. Looks like it's bent on our bender. Can you kind of walk me through this one a little bit and tell me how how this particular model came to fruition?
Yeah, one of the things that got us to this point was we were just trying different layouts, seeing what was the most comfortable, what was the most useful to type on. So once John developed this method of creating top plates, which were also kind of cases, just without the bottom, that was okay. It still works fine as a keyboard, so we didn't need that to create a layout and then type on it for a while and see how it worked. And at this stage, we were just kind of like, create a layout as fast as we can so that we can type on it and see how it feels. So this was made with Otemu Blues, which I just had laying around, grab bag keycaps, which I also just had laying around. And then we passed it around a whole bunch more and typed on it a whole bunch more. Eventually, something very close to this became not exactly the final prototype, but
yeah, we're starting to really get close here.
Yeah, and actually this might be one of the ones that was pretty much the same as that one. A little bit later, we spaced the arrow cluster out a little bit and added home and page up and page down on the right side. We ended up making the left shift key a little bit bigger because when you reach over with your pinky finger, sometimes you just kind of go off the edge there.
Right.
And having it square with the caps lock and control was a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
At this point, this one's numbered 5. We had about 5 or 6 prototypes that were all very similar in layout, and we just passed them out to everybody. We had marketing try them, we had engineering try them. We basically tried a bunch of them. We had a spreadsheet that we would keep notes in and say like, okay, number 5 is checked out to Aaron. He'd type on it for a while and then he'd leave his thoughts in a box in there. So we just had a whole bunch of data on what was good about this layout, what was bad about this layout, and eventually that kind of got us to where we are with launch. It's a bit unconventional as far as layout, but I think it adds a lot with utility.
Right, absolutely. Well, and for me, obviously, I love the split space bar on launch. This one, I will say, looks a little dirty. It's a little dirty.
This one got passed around a lot.
And it looks like it got passed around a lot.
Yeah.
So you said this was number 5. So where lies 1 through 4 these days?
I think most of them are still out in the factory.
Okay.
I don't know if all of them are there, but most of them should be still.
Cool. Awesome. This is super cool, man. Well, I'd like to say thanks for taking the time to just chat with me a little bit about these, and I'm sure we could chat much longer.
Yeah, I could keep going.
Sitting down over a beer, I'm sure we could probably wrap out for 4 or 5 hours about this sort of stuff because it's just super cool, right? Like you're taking, you're making something. Mm-hmm. You're making, building, and you're creating. Who would have thought, right? But I found that quite a few people here at System76 are into things like this, but it's really neat to see how it's kind of this organic growth, right? Where like you can visually see kind of the way that things have kind of come together, and through influence of various different people that have checked out, these later models and the feedback loop on that, and kind of how we came to land with launch the way that we did. It's just really cool to see the evolution of all this. So I'd like to say, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being on the first episode of Make, Build, and Create, and we will see you next time. If you want to find out more about Levi, where can we go to find out more about Levi? Do you have a Twitter? I
don't really have anything.
Levi at System76.com. You can reach out to Levi there if you really want to nerd out with him about keyboards. I'm sure he'd be happy to nerd out with you a little bit about keyboards. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so at Adam at System76. And just because we're focusing, currently on makers here at System76, we also want to see what you guys have made. So if you made something amazing and you want to share it with us, reach out to me, reach out to Levi, reach out to, really any one of us. We're super approachable. We'd love to see what you're making, what you're doing, and what you're creating. So continue to make, build, and create, and we'll see you in the next episode.